Welcome to the 6th episode of the Sub 220 Marathon Project video series. Matt here from Sweat Elite. Thank you to everyone that has been following the journey so far. We're halfway through the marathon training block, 12 weeks in total. 6 weeks down, 6 weeks to go. And for those of you that are joining me in Berlin, we've only really got 5 weeks of training to go before the last week that's normally a lighter week, a taper week, or you could even argue 4.5 weeks of training to go. I tend to cut back around 10 days before the marathon, although there is a couple of workouts in that last 10 days, but that's when I consider the training block more or less done, and you can't really get a lot more out of your training past that point. So I hope those of you that are joining me in Berlin are training well, healthy, and getting excited that there are 42 days left to go until Berlin Marathon. And once again, thanks for joining the journey that I'm documenting and trying to break 2 hours and 20 minutes for the marathon in Berlin in 6 weeks. So very soon I'll go through the 6th week of training and give you some commentary on the workouts, the long runs, and how things are going. Before that, I want to answer my 3 favorite questions of the week that have come through all on the YouTube channel comments this week. But before that, I want to thank the sponsors of this video series that are funding the gear and also the videography and the editing and so forth to bring this series to YouTube. So a huge thank you to Soar Running and Top 4 Running. Soar Running apparel, as mentioned in previous videos, are my favorite running apparel brand right now. They were my favorite running apparel brand last year when I approached Soar to sponsor this video series, and I was stoked when they agreed to sponsor this video series and be involved. They are supplying me with the gear that I'm wearing in this video series, the 12 weeks leading into the Berlin Marathon, and of course I'll race in their gear as well. I am a huge fan of them, mainly because they are super durable, really good in the heat. Like I've mentioned in a bunch of videos before, when I'm sweating a lot, like because it's super warm here right now in the summer in Colorado, it doesn't retain the sweat. It also has this, I don't know how they managed to do it with their engineering, their design, but it honestly feels like it's a little bit cooler to wear than other brands. I have no idea how they managed to pull that off, but it really does feel like that, so I've been wearing them in every single run and every single workout in the last 6 weeks, and obviously prior to that as well. If you want to learn more about Soar and their range of gear, they have some awesome winter gear as well. You can find the link in the description of this video to learn more and shop at Soar Running. The second sponsor of this video series, Top 4 Running, one of Europe's largest online running retail stores with all the top brands, all the most popular and latest models of all the top brands of running shoes and races, and at the lowest prices. And you can score an even further discount on their already low prices by using the code SWEATELITE at checkout if you're shopping at Top 4 Running, which I suggest that you do, given that they have, as mentioned, all the top brands there and at very competitive prices. They're supplying me with all of the shoes that I'm training in, as mentioned, and actually in the second half of this episode, I'm going to be doing a short shoe review and a opinion basically on all the shoes that they've asked me to test. I think there's about 9 or 10 pairs, some trainers, some racers, and I'll be giving my opinion on how they've been in training over the last 6 weeks. Okay, so the 3 favorite questions of the week. This is, when I was starting this video series, I did not plan to include this part in the video series, but I've just received so many good questions, as mentioned, that I thought it'd be great to include this part, because I feel like the questions being asked and my answers will hopefully help others a little bit as well in learning a little bit more about marathon training and the reasonings behind why we're doing some of the things that we're doing in training. So the first question, could you talk about the process of deciding to work with Rick Rojas, my current coach, and how does his training philosophies compare to the principles you've followed in the past marathon builds? Okay, so I'm actually going to I'm going to talk a lot more about this topic in a future episode, probably in episode 8 or 9, all about Rick's training philosophies. But to answer the question in short, I essentially followed Canova's principles through until now, and a little part of Rick's training does incorporate Canova's ideas. I don't think all of the training philosophies that are out there to run a fast marathon, they all blend to some extent. There's overlaps in all of them, in my opinion. When I hear people say that they train completely differently to other training philosophies, I question that, because at the end of the day, running is very simple, and I think that the philosophies all overlap to some extent. And Rick does do quite a lot of he's a big fan of doing some long specific marathon paced training runs, which is exactly what Canova basically does, a lot of, or his entire philosophy revolves around that. The thing that drew me to Rick was, one, I obviously got along with him very well when I was filming Nell early last year, and I really liked his philosophy around the whole your marathon time is limited to your 10K time and your 5K time. And I ran 30:39 for 10K in 2019, the week before I ran 2:27 for a marathon, and I've never broken 30:39 since. Despite probably being in that shape a few times in training, I've run 30:40 and 30:50 in that range 6 or 7 times since, and I've never improved on that 10K time. And I believe in order to run a faster marathon, 2:15, 2:16, which is my goal over the next few years, I need to bring that 10K time down to the 29 mid, 29 low. And Rick is a huge advocate for lowering that 10K time and that VO2 max effort, essentially improving upon that VO2 max pace in training in order to set yourself up to run a good marathon. And just the way that he described it in a video and then also to me in person in a meeting last year, I was really in agreement with, and that's why I joined Rick. But as I said, I'll go a little bit more into detail in a future episode about that. Question number 2. What is the purpose of a 10K time trial in a marathon block instead of just doing another marathon-specific session? Thanks. Good question. I mean, doing as many marathon-specific training sessions is, it's arguably not a good idea to do as many as you possibly can, but doing at least once a week in the 8 weeks leading in, I think is a good idea. But at the end of the day, I think it's always good to race in a block as well, at least once, ideally 2 or 3 times over 5K through to half marathon. And this was a substitute for a race, this 10K time trial, which was the previous episode to this one, episode 5. We wanted to try and find a 10K race to do. We couldn't really find one that was feasible. There was a long way away in terms of travel time, and I wasn't really interested in doing that. I'm trying to limit my travel at the moment. And we just decided to do a time trial in Boulder instead. There was a race pretty close by in Fort Collins that was very early in the morning, and the altitude I think is slightly higher there. I could be wrong. We just thought it'd be easy just to do a time trial here in Boulder. So to answer the question, that was actually in replacement for doing a race. I think it's very good to practice racing in training block, obviously, to practice all the small things that go with it, including eating prior to, warming up properly, and just making sure that you're pacing yourself properly in the time trial of the race as well. So we obviously tried to do all those things in the 10K, and I think it worked out pretty well. So hopefully I've answered the question well enough there. Third question. What was going on at the end of that 10K time trial with the device on the finger that gave a reading of 8.8? That was a lactate measurement, of which, I'll be honest, I'm actually not super knowledgeable in this space. I'm familiar with Ingebrigtsen's using it in training many times per week. Christian Blumenfeld, Gustav Eden in the triathlon space, they're huge advocates for lactate testing. I do know, obviously, the basics of it, and if you want to be training it, the standard use for that is to monitor where your lactate levels are and trying to sit right on your lactate threshold point, which for most people is between 1.8 and sort of a high 2.8 millimoles per litre in terms of lactate. We just wanted to see what our lactate was at the end of that run. There was really no meaning behind it other than just being interested in what it was showing. I was hoping mine would show under 10, of which it did, 8.8. Lauren's showed over 15, which hopefully that's accurate. If it is, then she obviously worked very hard in that. I worked as hard as I could too, but I think it was a good sign that my lactate didn't go too high. That's about what it should be, around 8 to 10, I think, after a hard 10K effort. So there was not really much of a reason to do that other than just being interested in what our lactates were at the end of the workout, end of the time trial, sorry. Okay, the training week, that is the 6th week of the marathon training block. I am definitely starting to feel the pinch, feel the fatigue from 6 weeks straight now of over 85 miles a week, I think, an average of anyways. And that's the most amount of mileage I've ever done in a 6-week period. So adding to that, and one thing I actually realized during this week is that in my previous episodes, I haven't mentioned the fact that I have been doing these gym workouts. That was a previous episode, 2 to 3 times a week on top of the training. When I've been going through the training weeks, I've completely forgotten to actually mention that I'm doing those after the Tuesdays and Friday sessions, and also one at home, either on a Wednesday or a Sunday. So that's added to the mileage as well. I think I've been missing that out because I haven't been putting it on Strava or logging it anywhere. So when I'm going through Strava, I haven't been mentioning it. But on the Sunday, the 7th of August, a 30K easy sort of moderate run that I did fasted to really try to see if I could utilize the fat energy stores at the end of that training run, and I think I successfully did that. I quote unquote bonked around the 20k mark and really became carbohydrate depleted and switched to fat as energy source, which is a horrible feeling, but it's a great training stimulus to teach your body to use that for fuel, which often happens at the end of the marathon when you can't replace the carbs fast enough. So that was a tough run, despite it wasn't an overly quick pace. 18.66 miles at 7:08 per mile. On Monday, a 10-mile run at 7:41 pace, standard recovery. On Tuesday was a really good workout, actually. Salty Boys Track Club, a bunch of us guys obviously are sweating quite a lot at the moment, so we just came up with that random name for a track club. It was supposed to be 6 by a mile, this workout, and the idea initially was to progress from 5:20 down to 4:40, so quite aggressive progressions, but my Achilles was a little sore before this workout, and I've noticed that it has been becoming a little sore after faster running, down under that 3 minutes per kilometre or 4:50 per mile. So we decided to extend it and make it a little bit longer and stick to around 5 minute to 5:05 per mile pace, which is around 3:07 to 3:10 pace. So we did 8 by a mile, starting at 5:13. That was supposed to be 5:20, but I tend not to look at the watts too much in the first one, try and run to 5:20, which was a little bit too fast. And then the rest of them were around that 5 low, high 4s. And then a 1200 after that, that was just because one of the guys that was training with me turned up a little bit late, and he started his mile repeats in the middle of mine, and I just offered to pace him for 1200, and that was actually quite comfortable. So that was still 3:45, which is 5-minute pace. And then 2 200s at the end, which I threw on just because the other guys were doing them too, and I still felt fine. I was surprised at how comfortable that workout was, but I think that was mainly because it was quite a bit cooler that day. We're finally starting to see a little bit of a turn some mornings in the temperature, and some of the mornings now are going from sort of 21, 22 down to 17, 18 degrees Celsius, which is sort of mid-60s, low 60s, which is making a big difference despite just such a small change in the temperature. So that morning I do remember being quite a bit cooler. On the Wednesday, I ran home from the car mechanic and ran 9.21 miles at 7:13. My car's getting its aircon fixed. It's had a few problems. In the afternoon, 4.21 miles, a double run at 7:09 pace. On Thursday, 10 miles with some friends at 7:41 pace at Telefarm, a pretty hilly loop, at least through the middle there. And then on Friday, the long, hard marathon specific run, which was very tough. It wasn't a cooler morning this day. It was around 70 to begin with, 21, I think, Celsius, and got up to high 80s, I think, mid 80s, 27 degrees Celsius. These conversions might be slightly out. But yeah, 24 miles at 6:09 pace. So 2-mile warm up, as you can see in the splits here. And you can obviously see some of the footage of this run as well that's been playing in the background. But 2-mile, pretty easy to get started, and then a slow progression down to running the last 8 to 10 miles at pretty close to marathon effort, which is around 5:30 to 5:35 pace for me. Nell was flying this day. She had 20 progressive, and we sort of blended together and mixed our runs up so that we could join each other. And I was dropped at 18 miles. She was flying, running low 5:20s, and I could not really keep up. If I did keep up, I probably wouldn't have finished my 24. And then I pretty much did a long cool down. I wouldn't call it a cool down because it was still extremely hard to run 6:30, 6:40 per mile pace, 3:55 to 4-minute K pace at the end. But completed it, and yeah, these long runs are a slog in this heat. They are just, towards the end of that run, I was really questioning why I was doing this, but of course that's a temporary thought. And yeah, that's the training week. So it was a 93-mile week, which is the biggest week of the block, 150K, and I feel like everything basically went to plan. The only thing I probably would have done differently is let Nell go at the 17-mile mark of her run, because I feel like those 3 miles, I tried to go with her a little bit, and it just really hurt towards those last 4 miles. I probably would have been better off maybe sticking to 5:30, 5:35 and trying to finish relatively fast and keep that through until the 23-mile mark, and then do a mile cool down. But all in all, solid week, and looking forward to the next one. That includes a time trial over, it was 10 miles, but it may be 15K, we're yet to determine, but they're very similar distances anyway, and a track session on Tuesday. So until next week, on the training front, that was the week in training. Moving on to the shoe review section of the video. So I was thinking about how to do this, and I figured if I was going to go through each of the 9 shoes Top for Running wanted me to try out and review and give a 3 to 5 minute review on each, this video would become far too long. So I'm going to do something a little bit different and just simply put them into categories. 2 basic categories, one of easy running through to, say, tempo, marathon pace work, and then anything faster than that. So half marathon, 5K, 10K speed work, if you want to call it, if you're a marathon runner, that is, down to even faster running than that. So Top for Running sent me 9 pairs of shoes, of which 6 fit in the category, in my opinion, and according to the Top for Running website, of a daily trainer. So I'll go through them quickly and then quickly give them a rating on what I believed they were out of 10 in an overall rating, and then a very quick rundown of how I would use them in my rotation personally. Now, shoe reviews are a very individual thing. I have conversations with people all the time about shoes, and I've noticed that some people love XYZ shoe, other people hate XYZ shoe, and it's something that you really need to figure out on your own. It depends on your stride, your foot strike, even things like your weight. And yeah, I think that this is something that I've really noticed over time, because people ask me all the time, what do you think about this shoe? And then they come back to me a month or 2 later and say they didn't like it, even though I loved it. That's the case with the Alpha Fly, I've noticed. And also one other shoe that I didn't review here, Top for Running didn't send me, but I have tried before that I was quite surprised about, was the Adidas, the Asics Metaspeed Racer. That's a very popular shoe. I tried it on in London. Australian friend of mine, Ed Goddard, allowed me to use a pair of his one day that were relatively new, and I didn't like them at all. Well, you know, they were a decent shoe, but comparing them to an Alpha Fly or a Vaporfly, I couldn't understand why anyone would choose that particular shoe over an Alpha Fly. It felt heavier, even though I don't think it really is heavier according to the weight, but it just felt stiff and not very quick. Anyway, onto the trainers. So the 6 pairs of shoes that I tried in the training category are the New Balance Fuel Cell Rebel, the Adidas Adistar CS Trainer, the Nike Invincible, the Adidas Boston 11, the On Running Cloud Monster, and the Nike Next Percent Tempo, or Tempo Next Percent. So I thought all of these 6 are good shoes. The one I would eliminate first from this range of trainers, so when I say trainers, anything from easy running down to sort of steady running or close to marathon pace work. So you're not really getting down to, you know, your intervals on the track or even 1K or mile repeats, anything sort of slower than that. I would eliminate first the Boston 11. Which surprised me because I had heard great things about the Boston 10. I'd heard mixed things about the Boston 11, but when I tried them, I don't know, they felt heavy, even though they're actually not heavier than the other ones, which is a bit of a mystery. They felt hard and firm, but then very little, so many of these shoes now, especially the Nike range, have that feeling where you're propelling forward a little bit. They're giving you that slight push forward. And this just doesn't have that at all. You know, rewind 5 years ago, I feel like this would be a great shoe, but just comparing to what else is out there now, I would eliminate that one first. I give it a 6 out of 10. Still decent. I definitely wear them. Very appreciative of Top Running for sending them to me, but I would not wear them moving forward. The other 5 in this category, in my opinion, suited my foot better. So I think my favorite is probably no surprise, the Nike Invincible. I would give this as an easy running shoe a 10 out of 10. Very hard to beat. I know that many people agree. It's light, it's stable, it's very supportive. As you can see, there's a huge sort of amount of that ZoomX foam around the side there. You're getting that little propelling feeling forward by using them, and they're just so comfortable. They honestly are a piece of art. Like that, I don't really know how else to put it, but when I first tried them on, I just thought to myself, this is an incredible, advancement in shoe technology, because it feels like when you're using these on a soft trail, it feels like you're just running on the cloud. Huge fan. The one probably that I preferred the second best was the On Running Cloud Monster, and very close. I would give these a 9.5 out of 10. I really like this shoe. Pretty similar, maybe not quite as soft, but everything else was more or less the same, in my opinion, in terms of that slight rocking forward feeling. Very comfortable, very light. The only thing I noticed about these, I'm not exactly sure how this occurs with the fabric, but when it was getting really hot and sweaty, I noticed that these got a little bit heavier, the sweat retained in the shoe, whereas it wasn't so much the case with the Invincibles. That's the only one downside I'd say. Otherwise, really big fan of the On Running Cloud Monster. These two here surprised me a lot because the Adidas Adistar CS, when I first pulled them out of the box, I thought that is a brick. It feels a little heavier than the other ones. It's meant to be a daily trainer just like the other two, or just like all of these for that matter. But I think the back, it just looked like a big rock, almost like a firm boat towards the back there. But when I actually put them on and tried them, I quite liked the feeling of them. And I would definitely keep these in my shoe rotation. It's hard to keep them in though when you've got these other alternatives that are better, but I have actually used these quite a bit. They're not as soft, they're not as spongy as the other two. They don't have that sort of like really soft feeling when you're running, but at the same time they do have the rocking forward feeling. And also when you're dealing with Achilles pain, of which, as I've mentioned, I have very mild Achilles tendonitis at the moment, it's well and truly manageable. This gives you the feeling that it's really almost like it's super supportive of that area, and it's almost like holding that entire back ankle area with Achilles in a really firm position. That's the feeling I got from these, and I quite like that because sometimes when I wear the Alpha Fly, for example, which is obviously not in this category, and I'm using them a lot, and my Achilles can get a little bit sore because it's just not holding that in place at all. It's allowing it to really move all the time. I don't know if that makes sense, but I would give these a 8 out of 10. I like them. I would keep them in the shoe rotation, and if they wear out and I'm finished with them, I would definitely continue wearing them. But honestly, with the Adidas Boston 11, I'd probably be inclined to buy a new pair of these before going to these, but in this case I would probably wear these. The New Balance Fuel Cell Rebel. Now this was an interesting one, and I didn't really know when I first took them out of the box and put them on what category they were in, because they're much lighter than the other ones and they're a lot more almost like a racer, and they don't have the support. But the thing that I really like about these is I feel like you could do almost anything in these. And when you're traveling and you maybe are not in the middle of a hard training block and you just want to take one pair of shoes, I feel like this would be the ultimate pair, because I feel like you probably could do speed work. You could almost race in these as well. They wouldn't be as fast as the Alpha Fly or Vapor Fly or Adios Pro 3 or anything like that, but they are quite light. They do have some of that foam, which I believe is called is Fuel Cell, I think. I'm actually quite unfamiliar with New Balance's range. But yeah, I really like these. I feel like this is probably an ideal shoe for like marathon pace work if you don't want to have the full-blown carbon fiber plate and really supportive, responsive foam. So I was surprised by these. I actually really like them. I would give them an 8 out of 10 as well, and I would continue wearing these. They're an interesting one though. They're almost like a mixture between a trainer and a racer, and almost like a Nike Free. So yeah, I was a fan of these. And the Nike Next Percent Tempo, everyone's a fan of these, I feel like. I don't think I've heard anyone dislike these. They're sort of in between a heavy trainer and an Alpha Fly, or a Next Percent, sorry. Probably perfect for marathon pace work. Whether or not you want to do anything easier than that is a different story. I'm not sure. I would give these a 9 out of 10. Huge fan of these. And I think, yeah, as I mentioned, I don't know if they're super suitable for easy running. You could probably get away with doing almost anything in these, like similar to the New Balance one, but I think this is the sweet spot for these at the sort of the steady state running or even speed work if you wanted to, even though I know I put them in the training category, the trainers category. So yeah, I'm a fan of these. And so in short, I would keep all of these 5 in my shoe rotation. I think if I had to pick one to go with, I would go with Nike Invincible, followed by On Running Cloud Monster. But at the same time, if I was going to go away on a trip and I wanted to take one pair of shoes, I would probably have to decide between one of these two, because they're a utility, you can do almost anything in them. But it's so hard to go past these two because they're super supportive and super soft, and I just enjoy running in these. And once again, apologies to the Adidas range and the Boston 11, I would eliminate these ones. So onto the racer speed work category. I've only got 3 to review here, but I have, as mentioned, tried the ASICS Metaspeed, and it's probably unfair to rate them given I won them a few months ago and I'm not comparing them at the same time. But I will say that I prefer these 3 over the ASICS Metaspeed for sure. So I tried out the Alphafly, the Adidas Adios Pro 3, and the On-Running Cloud Boom. And I feel like this is in a different category to these 2 in a sense of this is nowhere near as bouncy, springy, as fast, but at the same time I do like them. I think if you're one of the runners that prefers to avoid using carbon fiber plate, the race day advantage of these shoes that are as quick as you can get more or less, this is probably quite a good shoe to use in training. I've used these in quite a lot of interval workouts because I want to avoid using the quote-unquote super shoes. I don't know if this is actually in the super shoe category too much. I feel like this is actually quite a good shoe to use in training and speed work. I would not do easy running in these, but at the same time I would, and I have done quite a few speed workouts and I've found them very comfortable. They're quite flexible, they're quite light, they've got a small amount of spring to them and speed, but at the same time I don't think I would race in these because the alternatives are just better. I give these a 7.5 out of 10, and I definitely would recommend them, but at the same time probably only for workouts on the track or on the road if you want to save the super shoe carbon fiber plate advantage to race day. Otherwise, probably no point in having them in the shoe rotation if you're not one of those people, in my opinion. So these 2, I feel like these are probably the most popular 2 super shoes right now. Maybe also throw in the ASICS Metaspeed in that category as well. Adidas Adios Pro 3. So I used these in the 10K time trial in the last video and I really like them. I may use them at Berlin Marathon. It will be one of these 2. I have to have a further think about it and use them both a few more times in training, but I really like these. I don't think they had quite the spring and bounce of the Alphafly, but there's something about the positioning of the shoe that basically is throwing, is pushing you forward that I really, really liked. They felt quick, they're super light. I believe they're the same weight or very, very similar. But yeah, I don't have the vocabulary to really properly explain why I like them over the Alphafly more specifically, but I definitely found them very similar. And like I said, I'm really considering using these on the big day. The Alphafly, there is no surprise, and I'm a huge fan of the Alphafly. I give these a 10 out of 10, and sorry, my rating of these, I would say 9.5 out of 10. I just purely say that because I don't feel like I can give them both the same rating in this category because I still have a gut feel that I prefer these better, but that rating may change over time because keep in mind I've only worn these twice in one workout and in one 10K time trial, whereas I've used the Alphaflies many, many times. So I feel like I've just got a little bit more feeling out to doing these ones. Alphafly, phenomenal shoe. I mean, I know that some people don't like them. They prefer the Vaporfly because they feel a little bit clunky and around corners. Some people think that they are a little bit unstable. I don't have that issue. And I really like this shoe. I think the best thing about it is, well, there's many good things about it, but one of the best things is the fabric is just so light and so well at avoiding filling up with sweat when it gets hot. Because I've done a few very long, hard marathon training runs in these shoes lately, and when it gets hot, these shoes can get really heavy, but these don't seem to retain the sweat so well. So, yeah, I'm a huge fan of these. 10 out of 10. My gut feel is I'll race in these in Berlin, but we'll see. I'll use these 4 or 5 more times and then make a decision. There's my shoe review for Top for running. I hope in future I can test out a few more super shoes and races so I can have a wider range. But yeah, hopefully that helps some people make some decisions moving forward, and definitely do check out Top for Running and use the code SWEATELITE to get the lowest price on the top brands and top models currently available.